Hey everybody, Mark Wojtasiak, aka Woj, back again for another Vectra AI Hunt Club podcast, Cyber Minds episode. New guest, excited for this one. This will be a fun one. Brought on Derek Phillips. Derek, I'll let you introduce yourself to our massive audience, and then we'll kind of get into
And I
it.
think so. Yeah, no. Thanks, Mosh, for having me. Excited to be here. Derek Phillips. I'm the new Chief Revenue Officer for Vectra AI.
Awesome. Well, we're excited. We're excited because you and I even haven't had a chance to sit down. It's like here's one of our first conversations, and we're doing it live, or not live, but we're doing it, on the podcast. I think first of many conversations we're going to have, and um, I wanted to pick your brain on a few things. Let's talk about customer conversations and value, right? Um, Chief Revenue Officer, kind of lead the sales function. But I wanted to kind of root this in what's near and dear to our heart, because obviously one of Vectra's values is customer first, is kind of first thing off the bat, how do you define value for customers? In terms of, like, not only in terms of conversations you have with customers, in terms of whatnot, like, where does value start with customers?
First, it's actually understanding them, right? I think every customer is a little bit different, and the value that they're looking for in a situation, in time, in a solution is variable based upon who they are and what they're doing, right? The industry they're in, the verticals that they serve, the market that they're in, right? So I think you want to be able to sit down and understand where the customer is, right? What are they doing? Why are they doing it? What are they trying to achieve as a business, right? What are the top line? Are they, where are they focused on the bottom line in terms of what they're delivering? Are they growing? Are they doing acquisitions, right? Whatever those things you need to understand about them, because the more you understand them, the more you can actually be able to relate potentially a solution to them and what they're going to get out of it, where it's going to go, what it's going to do for them, and then help them then ultimately get to a value around that offering,
Yeah.
right? In terms of what that looks like.
Yeah, what I mean, you like understanding them, understanding. I like to think that there's levels of understanding. Obviously, you had talked about what industry they're in, even like company size. There's got to be a level of understanding in terms of, like, the individual you're talking to as well. Is there? Talk to me a little bit about that. Broaden the definition of understanding for me.
Yeah, most certainly, right? I mean, if you're having a conversation with the CEO, CFO, right? I mean, it's very different because it should be financially driven in most cases, right? You get down to the CIO, CISO, the relationship is going to be around what their overall objectives are. What are they doing? The security risk profile, different things like that. Sometimes we get into the SOC manager or even SOC analysts in terms of how they're going to do it. And so the value really depends on who the person is and what their, role is within the organization, what they're targeted with, what they're trying to achieve from a business standpoint. And so you have to understand that to be able to ultimately align those different things. And so I think, to your point, all of the industry pieces, but then ultimately the individual that you're talking to, you have to understand, right? In terms of, are they trying to finish a career? Are they beginning their career? Are they looking for whatever they're doing to get them to the next promotion or to validate why they just got a promotion, right? So understanding those different facets of the individual becomes really important.
How do you bring that philosophy to Vectra AI? Not that, we're big problem approach outcome thinkers. Like, when you're sitting down with an individual or a group of individuals at an organization, I like to think they're sitting down. They choose to sit down with us. There's 3,000 plus security vendors out there. It's like you get a chance to sit down with them. There's a reason they're sitting down with you, right? It's like, I want to hear your pitch. I'm like, come on, really? You could hear the pitch. Go on YouTube and listen to a
Sure.
bunch of people pitch. It's like they clearly have a problem, right? And it's like, why are we here? Is that fun? I mean, obviously, understanding where they're coming from ahead of time, doing a little homework, right? Who is this company? How do they operate? What's important to them? Who's this individual? How do they operate? What's important to them? But trying to get at that core problem or problems that they're trying to solve. Do you see that as fundamental to that first engagement?
Yeah, I think it's the first few engagements, to be honest with you. They're to your point, they're giving up their time, right? And I think time is the most valuable asset that we all have, and it's the thing we control the least in most instances,
Yeah.
right? So some of what you want to make sure they've given you that time, you want to make good use of it. There's also the people aspect of it and getting to know them and have them trust you and have a level of rapport. And I think having to make sure you get enough mix in those conversations, whether it's the beginning or the end, right, with the meat in the middle in terms of what the topic is, you have to get to know them, right,
Yeah.
beyond this sort of that role and that title, and understand what makes them tick and what they're doing. And they got to have the same thing on your side, right? And so I know it's not always about the weather, but it's about what's in the background. It
Yeah.
is about what sports team they have on there or the pictures of their kids doing things, right? You have to be able to make that connection because I think connecting people is becomes really important because we're ultimately about those people.
Yeah.
And
I,
then being able to align that time, right? And what are you going to do? And how do I help understand what that's going to be and what they're trying to do? And how you can help build that through steps. And you can't just jump in. Oh, let me just tell you about us. It has to be, let me understand you. Let me understand what you're doing, what that problem is, be able to ask questions about it, tell them what you do and don't understand, be able to talk about other customers that you've talked to, other problems that you solved in different situations. And so those things become really important as well throughout the dialogue
yeah.
and the first few conversations.
Yeah, I imagine that you dropped a couple words there that I think are often overlooked. And this may occur to your point over a course of meetings or engagements or phone calls or meeting at events, collisions, I like to call them, whether they're purposeful or accidental.
Yeah.
Um, there's an element of building mutual, and you drop this word trust, for one. I think there's an element of building mutual respect, right? And then there's an element of values, like mutual. Do we value the same things, right? As organizations, as people, and that's where you begin to build that relationship because relationships are obviously built and they're earned. They're not acquired or, paid for. Um, Talk to me a bit about that. Once you've established that mutual trust and respect, and it may take some time, you share the same values. Where does that relationship go from there? Right? You've diagnosed a problem. Now where are we going with the relationship?
I think you have to be in a position to, you always want to tell them what you can do for them. That may not align to what they need to do. And I think you have to be willing, able, and ready to tell them you're the wrong fit.
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to solve their problem. And I think that's the part that people get uncomfortable with quickly. It's like, well, but I'm really close, or it's kind of what you need to do. And I think that's part of being able to say, actually, now having heard you describe that or talk about what you're doing, I can do part of that, or that's not really what we do, or it's not how we do it, right? Can we talk about something different, right? You may be able to turn it on its head, right, in terms of what that was described, or but you have to be willing to have it not be to your advantage. And I think that's part of how you end up building that credibility, that respect, that trust in
Yeah.
terms of what you're doing is being ready, prepared, and willing to admit or acknowledge that your two fits might not be there.
Yeah. It's also there's an element of like offering up someone who we believe can help them, right? That's not us. But you know what? I know so and so over at this company. They're doing some tremendous work around this problem. You should reach out to them. I can help you set up a relationship, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that goes a long way in terms of like building that. That's probably another word. You alluded to transparency. Hey, we can't help you, right? That's not a problem we solve, or I'm a product guy. I mean, God, if we only had this capability, we would close this deal, right? It's like, no, there's certain times where you have to walk away and admit transparently that that's not something we can help them with. Um, if it is something that we can help them with, we've aligned on a problem, right? What do you often hear from customers as that next step? What are they most interested in? Is it use cases? Do they want to understand our approach? Like, what's the next? We've aligned on a problem to be solved. Like, where do we take the relationship then?
Usually what ends up happening is it gets broader, right? In some cases, it's how do they get the parts of their team or their organization aligned to that to be able to understand it. Sometimes you have to go do work with the technical team and get validation or work around that, whether you're moving to a POV or a demo or of some sort. It's also let me talk to somebody else who's gone through this, right? Can I connect them to a reference or yeah, a peer that's kind of gone through this and they want to get into talking through that, what that experience was? Because sometimes, as we all know, when you buy a solution, it's not always just about that solution. It's how it integrates to other things. It's about all the alternatives you have to do. It's the way it's going to impact other things, how it's going to impact my operations or the people side of things from an internal standpoint. And so it's either getting them introduced to, as I said, a peer, a reference, a partner who can do things, whether it's an integrator of some sorts that can align and pull those things together that has that experience, or it's moving to the rest of their team and helping them go through that journey with their team that's going to be involved through that process as well. And so sometimes it's just figuring out which of those are the next steps that usually go, because as we know, very few things get done by one person, one reason
Yeah.
in a silo. It certainly spreads out from there, and you've got to get the different connection points aligned.
Um, I got one final question for you. We talked about trust, transparency, mutual respect, sharing the same values, aligning on the problem. Can we help them or not? Like fundamental stuff to like building a relationship. What's your definition of an ideal customer relationship?
Something that's ongoing, right? I think to be able to engage with that customer, go through that journey with them from a selection, go through that process with them of implementation and getting to the value, align on the measure of that value, the story that goes with it. I think being able to go do that and have those right checkpoints to be able to help them be able to grow, understand their business, see how it helps them mature from an offering standpoint, from a risk profile, whatever it might be for them, and then have those checkpoints that go on, right? To go break bread, right? We kind of
Yeah.
talked about those different things you do and how you continue to build that relationship. It's finding those opportunities in terms of what those collisions, as you reference, may be in terms of seeing each other at RSA or Black Hat, that you may do those things, or that you're showing up at their office, or they're coming to sales kickoff to present and talk to your team about what they've gone through. Right? It's all of those things that go back and forth, and I think it's what can I do for you that's beneficial.
Yeah.
What can you do for me that's beneficial, and having the relationship where you can ask for those things as well.
Hey, 18 holes of golf isn't a bad collision either. I do that
No, no,
where
yeah,
appropriate. Yeah,
captive audience, and I can see the competitiveness that comes out in individuals and or
yeah,
frustration that may come.
you might see my true self on the golf course if I'm having a bad day off the tee. But either way, vulnerability. Like I'll be
There
vulnerable.
you go.
You know, I'll show where I struggle on the course.
All it takes is that one shot to bring you back the next time.
Yeah, that's golf. It's like, you know, just need one little win and everything kind of, you know, it keeps you going. And heck, that's probably a metaphor for anything, right? It's just like little wins matter. And I
Absolutely.
think they go a long way in building fruitful, bi-directional relationships with customers. And I love your philosophy, your approach to it. Welcome to Vectra AI. It's great to have you. And we'll do another one of these. I think this was great. So
So, George, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me, and excited to be here.
sounds great. Thanks, Derek. All right, everybody. Thank you. If you comment, share, give us ideas, you have questions for Derek, for myself, whatever, please throw them in the comments. Swoj, Cyber Minds episode, Hunt Club podcast with Derek Phillips. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Derek. Appreciate it.